Man, you remember back in the days, I used to say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 360 experience with myself, Thomas Mabaso. But nowadays I no longer do the introductions, man. I feel like doing the introductions is a waste of time, man. I feel like people in this country, they are panicking about the future of South Africa, man. So they are not going to waste their 1 minute listening to the introductions. So nowadays, when I switch the microphone on, man, I want us to get to business, and I want us to get to business right away. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, man. A couple of people said that, Thomas, man, you need to stop this thing of just jumping and start talking right away. Some people are saying, Thomas, man, you need to keep it, man. We want to hear what is happening in the country. So, guys, I don't know. Should I continue doing the introductions, or should I continue switching on the microphone and getting to business? I prefer the latter, man. I prefer the latter. So, guys, the son of the former president Jacob Zuma, Duduzane Zuma, it looks like Duduzane Zuma is quite serious about running for the presidency of the country, man. You know, for the longest time, I've been laughing at Duduzane Zuma, man. The idea of having Duduzane Zuma as the president of the country, man, it is laughable. It is laughable. Not because Duduzane Zuma is not capable, man, but because of his name. Because of his name and because of his associations, man. I don't think South Africans are going to vote for Duduzane Zuma. Not because Duduzane Zuma is a horrible person, but because of the name Zuma, man, and because of his associations with the Guptas. So you remember, guys, how proud Duduzane was to tell South Africans that the Guptas are my friend. The Guptas are my friends, man. I'm doing business with all of these people, man. They are welcoming me in Dubai, man. I'm welcoming them in South Africa. These people are my friends, man. And South Africans were so disgusted to think that this man is a son of the president, and he goes around telling people that the Guptas are his friend. Despite all the allegations that have been leveled against the Guptas, Duduzane Zuma still went out and told the South Africans that he's doing business with the Guptas. There is nothing wrong with the Guptas, man. Duduzane Zuma just decided to ignore all the evidence. Duduzane Zuma just decided to ignore South Africans. But today, the same Duduzane Zuma wants to run for the presidency of the country, man. For I thought it is laughable. I didn't think it was serious, but it looks like Duduzane Zuma is quite serious about his new political party, All Game Changers. I think Duduzane Zuma is quite serious. So he's back again on the news because recently he went to Gagasi FM, and while he was there, he was questioned about land expropriation without compensation. He was questioned about land expropriation without compensation, man. You know, the first thing that came to my mind when Duduzane Zuma was questioned about land expropriation without compensation, man, it has to be the EFF. It has to be the EFF, man. You know, for the longest time, I've been listening to the EFF talking about land expropriation without compensation. But there is one issue that people are not actually addressing. There's one issue that people are not actually addressing, man. You know, when people talk about land expropriation without compensation, especially the EFF supporters and especially the members of the EFF, one thing they don't touch on, it is the consequences and the pushback that South Africa is going to get. I mean, let's say the EFF wins the election. Julius Malema is your president. I know many of you, it is your worst nightmare, but it is just an example, man. Don't panic just yet. Julius Malema becomes the president of the country. EFF goes on with the policy of land expropriation without compensation. The supporters of the EFF and the EFF members, the one thing that I haven't heard them discuss, it is the pushback that South Africa is going to get. Because just like Zimbabwe, South Africa is going to get the pushback. South Africa is going to get the pushback internally, and South Africa is going to get the pushback international. But I haven't heard anyone discuss how the EFF is actually going to deal with that pushback, because there is going to be the pushback. Most of the EFF supporters, man, they go around thinking that once they get in power and once they start expropriating land without compensation, everything is still going to be good. That's why they are talking about opening a state bank, and this bank is going to shower people with money. Everyone who comes with an idea, the state bank is going to give them money because the EFF government will have money. So it looks like Duduzane Zuma, when it comes to this whole thing of land expropriation without compensation, he doesn't agree with it. He doesn't agree with the land expropriation without compensation, because finally there is someone who can talk sense when it comes to land expropriation without compensation. You look at Zimbabwe, and whenever you're having conversations with the people from the EFF, you're like, guys, you want South Africa to end up like Zimbabwe, and they say that South Africa is not going to end up like Zimbabwe. So the one question that I have is that how do you guys know that South Africa is not going to end up like Zimbabwe? How is the EFF going to expropriate land without compensation different from Zimbabwe? What are the mechanisms that the EFF is going to use to expropriate land without compensation? And if there's a pushback, because I know for guarantee there is going to be the pushback internally and internationally. If there's a pushback, how is the EFF actually going to deal with that pushback? Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe and his friends, they lied to the people of Zimbabwe. They told them that, guys, we are going to expropriate land without compensation and everything is going to be good. We are going to be rich. We are going to own our land. We are going to own our mineral resources. What is the story of Zimbabwe today, man? Zimbabwe, millions of Zimbabwe are scattered all over Africa. The mineral resources of Zimbabwe are not actually benefiting the average citizens of Zimbabwe. This is why the other time when I was doing that video, I said, man, do you think that if ZANU-PF or Robert Mugabe and his friends were transparent with the people of Zimbabwe, do you think the average citizens of Zimbabwe would have still agreed to go on with the land expropriation without compensation? I'm making an argument that I don't think the average Zimbabweans, if they actually knew the consequences of land expropriation without compensation, I don't think these people would have actually went ahead with supporting Robert Mugabe and his friends. Because do you think if Robert Mugabe actually told the people that, guys, things are going to be bad in the country, there's going to be a pushback, we are going to be sanctioned, do you think that the people in Zimbabwe would have still agreed with Robert Mugabe? I don't think people would have agreed with Robert Mugabe. I don't think that the Zimbabweans, they love how they live. I don't think Zimbabweans actually enjoy what is happening in Zimbabwe, because right now the ZANU-PF cadres are the ones enjoying. The ZANU-PF cadres are the ones that are benefiting from this whole thing of land expropriation without compensation, while the average citizens are scattered all over Africa. So it looks like South Africa is facing the same problem, man, with the economic freedom fighters. They're simply talking about land expropriation without compensation, and we are going to give our people the land, and the land will belong to the state, and the state is going to distribute the land to the people. This is where some critics come and say, man, if you are saying that the land is going to belong to the state, how do we know that the profitable land is not going to be dished out to the EFF cadres? How do we know that? How do we know that? Because this is the same thing that is happening in Zimbabwe. And people will tell you, especially the EFF supporters will tell you that, no, man, you see what is happening in Zimbabwe, it is not going to happen in South Africa. And I'm like, man, how are we going to do things differently? Because today, as we speak, in Zimbabwe, the land and the mineral resources in Zimbabwe, they are benefiting the ZANU-PF cadres. The average Zimbabweans are not benefiting anything from that. So when you come and say that the state is going to expropriate all land and they are going to distribute the land, how do we know that the profitable land is not going to be dished exclusively to the EFF cadres? We don't know that. We don't know that. So this is the danger of land expropriation without compensation, and this is the danger of having naive people who are not asking relevant questions, because I feel like these are the questions that people should ask. You have Zimbabwe as an example. Why are we not like, guys, when we expropriate land without compensation, what kind of pushback are we expecting? What kind of pushback are we expecting, and how are we actually going to deal with that pushback? No one is asking that question. No one is asking that question, man. South Africans are believing the same things that Zimbabweans believed. South Africans, man, are being duped the same way. Zimbabweans are being duped. So Duduzane Zuma, man, is saying, no, I am not going to agree with this thing of land expropriation without compensation, because I know that there are consequences. I know that South Africa will face some consequences. These are kind of consequences that people are not discussing in the EFF. So guys, this is what Duduzane Zuma has to say about land expropriation without compensation. Please tell me if you think that Duduzane Zuma is making sense. Please tell me if you think Duduzane Zuma is making sense. And if Duduzane Zuma is making sense, can you please consider voting for him?
Very much for that, for the question from our dear brother. It's never too late for change. Whether people think it's last minute, we are here. We mean business. We mean well. We will be a part of the game-changing dynamic in this country. So I think we are just in time. We're definitely just in time. It couldn't be a better time. You know, change is something that is necessary, and we can never be too late for it. So I think it's an opportune moment, not just for ourselves, but for many others. And then the second question that was asked was our policy position on the land issue. Ours is very simple. It is a redistribution of land with compensation. People have to be and will be compensated for their land. Once again, we understand the history of land in this country. We understand the bad history of it, the dispossession from ourselves as Africans countrywide. But we're in 2024. These issues have been going on for a very long time. The debates have been raging on for a very long time, and we're nowhere near when it comes to the expropriation without compensation. And from my side, I don't believe in it. South Africa is an African country, but it's global in its nature. We fall under certain financial structures that exist and financial systems that exist in the world. And the wealth of this world is hinged upon land and its value, including the assets that sit upon that land. So if we can just say in another 30 seconds, I don't belabor the point, is if land is taken away from anybody that that owns it right now, from whichever background, it is going to cause a problem. The land issue that has been dealt with the way that we are proposing to deal with it as per the parties that are in existence right now of expropriation without compensation has led to death, famine, and not coming back from the abyss of what is poverty. That will happen in South Africa if we do that. So all we're saying is we need to look at it in a different way and say, we have these pieces of land. Let's engage people that have the land. Let's buy it from them if they're willing to sell, willing buyer, willing seller. Government will then hand it out to the people that are deserving of the land. Deserving meaning that they actually will take that land and will make a success of it. Because we're not just going to do the whole thing of handing over. People disappoint us, like we've seen it happening, and then now we're stuck in a situation where what we're trying to do backfires on us.
Right. Man, be ready, Duduzane, man. Be ready to be crucified. Be ready to be crucified for making sense. Be ready to be crucified for making sense. You know, this is the problem with South Africans, man. South Africans are not inquisitive. South Africans are not asking questions, man. I don't know what kind of people do we have in the country. I don't know what kind of people do we have in the country, man. You know, when you have a policy of land expropriation without compensation, it is fine. It is fine if you have that policy, man, but the people need to be able to ask all the relevant questions when it comes to the land expropriation without compensation. What Duduzane Zuma is saying is telling the truth that South Africa is an African country, man, but you have to see at how the finances of this country, at how the economy of this country, man, is actually structured. We are going to face problems if we go on and expropriate land without compensation. As much as some people believe that, we need to expropriate land without compensation, man, we need to rectify the mistakes that were made in 1652. But this is the kind of common sense that many people are not having. This is the kind of common sense that many people are not having, man. And I think that the South Africans are actually doing themselves a disservice by not asking these relevant questions. Because when you come out and say that, guys, we want to expropriate land without compensation, man, I think the first question that people should ask is, what kind of consequences are we looking at? What kind of pushback are we looking at, man? And this is what people are doing. People are assessing risk about everything. Even the military, man, before they go into a certain country, they're like, man, once we get there, man, like, what could happen? What could happen? Oh, the options are, we could be encircled. The options are, we could... These are kind of questions that people should be asking, especially South Africans, when you have Zimbabwe as a template. You have Zimbabwe as a template, and you still have South Africans these South Africans, they want to go on like how Zimbabweans went on during Mugabe's time. South Africans are not asking the questions. And this is the reason why the country is going to find itself in a huge trouble. This is why you're going to find yourself in a huge trouble, because the people are not asking relevant questions. I'm not saying that the EFF must go on and actually scrap the policy of land expropriation without compensation, but I'm saying that the EFF supporters and other people that are talking about land expropriation without compensation, these are kind of questions that you should hear. I have never heard a single leader from the EFF saying that, guys, we know that we are going to expropriate land without compensation. And this is the kind of pushback that we are expecting. We are expecting these people, man, to try to turn us into Zimbabwe. These people there's a possibility that they are going to do this, they are going to do that. And as an EFF, this is how we are going to deal with that. This is how we are going to deal with that. So this is one thing that is very important when it comes to land expropriation without compensation. So Duduzane Zuma, man, they are going to crucify you for making sense. They are going to crucify you for making sense, man. They've already crucified me for making sense. They're going to crucify you for making sense. But I think that you are making very valid point. You are making valid points, man. when we are talking about something, man, we need to be able to say that, guys, once we initiate such policy, this is what could happen. This is what could happen. And as a party, what is it that we are going to do? You can't simply say that we are going to expropriate land without compensation, and after expropriating land without compensation, we are going to establish a state-owned bank where young people are going to be showered with money. We are going to open our own industries, and these industries will be successful. We know that is not how it's going to happen. We know that is not how it's going to happen. I mean, like, once the land expropriation thing starts, I don't think other policies are going to be implemented. I don't think other policies are going to be implemented. I don't think the party will go as far as opening up their own industries. I don't think this is how the party is going to do. And after all, man, you have South Africans with 30%. How do you actually expect to build the industries with a bunch of 30%ers? How do you expect to build industries with a bunch of 30%ers? People are not talking about the education, man. I haven't heard enough political parties actually talk about the importance of reforming the education system. This is why when I was having that conversation with the Riser, say, guys, if you haven't seen that conversation with the Riser, say, please go down. There's a playlist that says Your Voice. You will find that interview there. I said that, guys, what is it are you going to do about this kind of education system that we are having? Because right now, the kind of education that our children are being fed in these Njimutera schools, man, it's a shame. It is a shame. No one is talking about reforming the education. It makes me feel like most of these political parties are fine with having ignorant South Africans. You know, political parties are funny, man, in South Africa. Political parties are funny in South Africa. Most of these political parties, most of these political parties, they still want to capitalize on the fact that the majority of South Africans are ignorant and uneducated. But when it comes to the elections, they now suddenly want the South Africans to be smart and vote out the African National Congress and vote for them. And they can capitalize on these ignorant voters. And it is not going to happen. This is why I always bash political parties when it comes to the election season, because these people are quiet. For the past 5 years, these political parties will be quiet. The last year of the election, political parties will be out saying that we need to teach people about the importance of voting. We need to teach people about the importance of the elections. I'm like, guys, you had 5 years to teach people about the importance of voting. You had 5 years to tell people that, guys, if you vote for someone, this is the kind of power that you are giving to people. But political parties are not talking about South Africans, especially when it comes to the voter education. So political parties are also trying to capitalize on the fact that the majority of South Africans are ignorant. The majority of South Africans are uneducated, and they get frustrated when these ignorant and educated people continue to vote for the ANC. They get frustrated. Right now, political parties, man, have failed. They have failed, especially when it comes to convincing average South Africans to go to the polls. Average South Africans are not even interested in going to the polls. Average South Africans are not interested in going to the polls. Political parties have failed. Why? For the past 5 years, these people, they didn't want to teach people nothing. They didn't want to make people aware of nothing. But suddenly, they think that election year, they're going to come out and convince people not to vote for the African National Congress. Man, the political parties in South Africa are about to learn the hard way that ignorance and ignorance costs a lot. Ignorance costs a lot. So I don't feel like South Africans are doing themselves any favor, man. If we have any political party talking about any policy, we need to be able to question that policy. We need to be able to question that policy, man. And unfortunately, for people like Duduzane Zuma, man, I know you can make sense. I know I've watched your interviews, man. I was watching that interview of yours and Penuel. I was also watching the interview that you did at SABC, man. And I must say that Duduzane Zuma, man, he has valid points. But I think that his name is going to work against him. I think that his association with his father is going to work against him. Many people actually believe that Duduzane Zuma only opened this party to garner young voters, and after the election, Duduzane Zuma is going to take his votes and pour it into the MK. This is the narrative that people are already dishing out right now, that Duduzane Zuma, man, is simply trying to help his father. He's simply trying to help MK. So I don't think Duduzane Zuma, man, with all his valid points, man, I don't think his image as an individual, man, I don't think it's doing him justice. Because when people see Duduzane Zuma, the first thing that comes to their minds is that, man, this guy is the son of President Jacob Zuma, man. This is the same guy who was arrogant telling South Africans that he's working with the Guptas and he's not going to stop working with the Guptas. So today, when that same person comes and says, I want to be your president, the South Africans are saying no. South Africans are saying, no, we are still okay with African National Congress. We want the ANC to destroy this country further. So we are still okay with African National Congress. Guys, I don't know. Please tell me what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button. And the most important part, subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabel. So I will see you next time. Bye-bye.